JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind is home to many extravagant characters, which isn't a surprise as that's a staple of the series at this point. Sure, these characters already stand out with their designs, but Hirohiko Araki is also known for being very detailed in his characterization for these fictional people. An example of these characters is Narancia Ghirga, one of my favorite characters from this part for multiple reasons. In my previous video, I had this to say about Narancia. He's immature and doesn't show much development early on in the plot, but that reaches a turning point during the fight with Squalo and Tiziano. And that's pretty much the most bare-bones description of his character. As while it's true that the Talking Head and Clash arc is a once-in-a-lifetime turning point for the 17-year-old, there are other moments that show the maturity and growth he's gone through, from the first meeting with Bucciolati to his final moments in the Colosseum. So this video will attempt to look at how Narancia grows up from the childish comic relief into one of the most respectable characters after enduring what seems like multiple traumatic events in the span of a week. Because, let's face it, growing up is bizarre. Hope you enjoy. Growing up, Narancia had a lack of parental figures as his mother died from an unknown eye disease and his father neglected him. This neglect led to him dropping out of school to live with a group of friends where he would commit petty crimes to have enough to feed himself. Because this group of friends were so tightly knit together, this showed Narancia that friendship was the most important thing, which eventually almost cost him his life as he ended up being framed for a crime he didn't commit thanks to some manipulation from his former friends. He then spent a year in a detention center where he possibly contracted the same disease as his mother, and because rumors were spread about its contagiousness from his former friends, Narancia is abandoned by everyone he's ever known. An important detail I haven't mentioned is the fact that Narancia didn't seek revenge on the people that framed him. During his year in juvie, he just assumed that what he was doing was the right thing as he protected the people closest to him, which makes it even more heartbreaking when the viewer realizes that he was used so easily thanks to his loyalty, one of his defining traits. Instead of trying to fly away from here, Narancia does what most people do and completely accepts his fate. He finally acknowledges the fact that fate has dealt him a god-awful hand and completely gives up. As a 15-year-old, Narancia has gone through what most people are either going through or have gone through, as everyone has already had their trust broken at some point. They've had that moment in their life where everything seems to go wrong and they just want to give up. I think this is where Narancia's real arc begins, as these tragic events lead to his hope being restored in humanity as he meets Fugo and Bucciolati. Because everyone has some low points, it just depends on how you bounce back from them. And I think that when Narancia meets Fugo, that's when he finally starts to, bounce back. Realizing the selflessness of Bruno's gang members show him that there are people in this world he can trust, as these people didn't owe Narancia anything and still helped him get rid of his eye disease while providing him with a chance to have a better life. Narancia is then presented with a choice. He can go back home to become more educated, or he can join the mafia to become a real dude that dresses like a girl. This is one of the first instances where we see Narancia show his loyalty and drive, as he becomes a sand user even after being warned about the dangerous world of Passione. Now, you could interpret this as Narancia being desperate for affection and guidance, which is also true, but he's been alone most of his life, and I see it as Narancia maturing because he gives up on leaving a normal life, only using the resources given to him at birth. By taking Polpo's test, completely disregarding the potential dangers of Black Sabbath and Passione, he takes his own life in hand and finally decides to do something for himself. Sure, he's also motivated by getting closer to his new gang, but he was clearly given the choice of going home, and here we can see that change from the lost boy who had given up on life some time ago. Keep in mind that at this point, Giorno hasn't even entered the scene yet. Which brings me to my next point, the Narancia's Aerosmith arc. Now, I'm not going to go too much into detail here, as most of what I need to say is already in a video made by Kaleb I.A, which will be linked in the description below. It goes into the details of why this arc is important to Narancia's development, but basically, for the first time, Bruno's gang are matched up against enemy stand users who show more determination and drive than most members of Passione. These people being La Squadra Esecuzioni, more specifically Marshall Mathers, or as he's known in the canon, Formaggio. While the previous stand users were powerful in their own right, they didn't show enough resolve or willpower to be an actual threat to the gang. However, La Squadra are different. They're a team of elite hitmen motivated by revenge who defected from Passione as the boss murdered two of their own as a threat for trying to uncover his identity. In a way, they're the perfect reflection to Bruno's gang, as they have the same amount of drive with similar goals of killing the boss, however their motives to kill come from a different place. Even if, yes, at this point Bruno's gang doesn't really want to kill the boss except for maybe Giorno. When Narancia goes up against the first member of La Squadra, it completely differs from previous battles as the enemy knows how to use their stand to the fullest. Narancia panics and causes mass destruction while Formaggio is just chilling like a fat man in a bathtub. However, after realizing that failing to kill Formaggio would just result in letting the gang down, Narancia changes his strategy, which eventually gives him the upper hand. Yeah, he still brute forces his way through instead of trying to outsmart the real Slim Shady, but in the end he still proves that he can stand out by not conforming to stereotypes in a world where being overly emotive can be a weakness. During this fight, Narancia loses his temper and destroys public property because his life depends on it, but also because he wants to prove to Fugo and the others that he can be counted on. Even after beating a powerful opponent on his own, he accepts a bittersweet victory as he's failed the mission of gathering supplies. This moment is important for this character as it shows that underneath all that loud, rambunctious screaming and kicking hides a boy who would give up anything for his loved ones, even if it means blowing up an entire city block, despite still wanting to slit some of his friends' throats sometimes. As Golden Wind advances, more members of La Squadra are taken down, but Narancia for the most part just chills in the backpack train. All of this fighting leads to Venice, or Venezia for all the intellectuals out there, and after some wacky hijinks on the San Giorgio Maggiore island, Bucciarati announces that he'll be defecting from Passione in order to reveal the boss's identity and take him down for good in arguably the most important scene from Part 5. Giorno and Bucciarati are the first to get on the boat of traitors with Trish. Others like Abacchio and Mista get on after a bit of reflection. This leaves Fugo and Narancia on the island still debating whether or not they should betray the organization. In this moment, they're the weakest link in Bruno's gang. They aren't weak in a power scaling sense as the two of them have proven their destructive capabilities in their own tussles with La Squadra, but right now, they still live in fear of the people who have power over them. Fugo is a character who suffers from explosive anger issues, and is a victim of intense self-loathing. He's incredibly intelligent and a morally good character, as he was the one to save Narancia from himself when he was scared and alone. Fugo's logical nature is the thing holding him back from getting on the boat, as he can't disregard his own safety for the sake of saving Trish. I don't necessarily believe he lacks loyalty, he just relies more on logic than emotion, but that's a topic for another video. Narancia, on the other hand, could care less about his own well-being. Instead of choosing between life or almost certain death, he has to choose between his mentor and his closest friend. During his time in Passione, making choices has been relatively easy for him, as the people closest to him have always been on the same side. And for the first time, he has to choose between the two of them, leading to a moment that just hurts to watch, as either way he knows he'll have to let someone down. While struggling to choose his path, he realizes the nobleness of this mission. Seeing that Trish has been hurt by her loved ones reminds him of his own life, which gives him the final push needed to join the others on the boat. Instead of choosing between Fugo and Bucciarati, Narancia forges his own path, creating a mix of the two, as he wants to help Trish not just as a friend, but as a family member. With this choice made, Narancia leaves his indecisiveness behind with Fugo, as he finally realizes that becoming a traitor is worth it, not only because it proves his loyalty to Bucciarati, but he's also finally found a purpose in life by wanting to protect Trish from the boss to prevent her from going through what he's had to endure. Even if it took him more time than the others, Narancia still finds the resolve necessary to try to overturn fate and kill the boss once and for all, proving to everyone else that he's not just a scared little kid who mindlessly follows orders anymore. And if that wasn't enough, Narancia is then forced into a 2-on-1 fight with Tiziano and Squalo, which, looking back on it, kind of fought the law of stand battles, but you know what, it's a gay couple, so I'll let it slide. This fight is similar to the one with Formaggio, as Narancia is on his own here, just as he was in the small town in Capri. Talking heads forces him to say the opposite of what he means, leading the other members of the gang on a road to nowhere while searching for the Clash's stand user. Giorno is also incapacitated, which raises the stakes even more, as their best healer can't do much for them anymore. This fight also differs from the one against Formaggio, as Narancia can't brute forces anymore. He's in Venice, a town filled with people, and murdering innocent bystander goes against his ideals. So for one of the first times, Narancia tries to outwit his opponents. As he finds out he's a liar, he realizes that he's losing the trust of the gang, besides Giorno, who figures out talking heads ability really quickly for some reason. This forces him to be more like Fugo and think before acting. There's no one here to give him orders anymore. Once again, he expresses a level of maturity not shown previously, and through deductive reasoning and ballsy tongue-cutting, he manages to kill both assassins without relying too much on barrages from Aerosmith's projectiles. Time moves on once again, and Narancia is now getting closer to Trish, which I think could have played a role in awakening Spice Girls, but yeah. Everything seems to be going great until the gang crash land in Sardinia to try to uncover the boss's identity, which leaves a casualty as Leone Abacchio is now dead. All the other characters acknowledge that death is a tragedy, but manage to hold on as losing Composure is a weakness here. Narancia still shows his emotional side once again, reminding the viewer that while yes, he's proven himself to be stronger than before, he's still just as vulnerable as anyone else. People don't just grow up and change magically, it takes more time than just a few days. And that's exactly what's shown here as Narancia just bursts into tears. He can't just shrug off a death of a loved one, so he slightly loses it. After realizing that there's no point in staying back though, Narancia picks himself up and decides to see the mission through, not stopping until the boss is dead, as Trish needs to be protected and Abacchio needs to be avenged. Also, I know Narancia is responsible for Risota's death, but that was more Risota's fault than anyone else's because, you know, he got cocky, so L plus ratio plus skill issue plus whatever. Narancia's character is not developed by this death. He was merely following orders, and well, he definitely did follow them. The story is then prematurely ended in the Colosseum as the gang have reached the end of their journey. Trish has been saved, and the final obstacle is Chariot Requiem. In this moment, Narancia thinks about what he can do in the future as he's finally found hope for himself. He promises to go back to school and reconnect with Fugo in Naples, which just proves how much Narancia has matured. Fugo parted ways with the gang on his own accord, and yet Narancia holds no grudges towards him. He's even glad that he'll be able to see him again, which also just makes his loyalty to his friends shine through, as a large disagreement isn't able to sever the bonds he's created with his closest friends. He's finally grown up and is ready to move on from the most dangerous jobs of Passione, and just as he's ready to celebrate, he gets killed by the boss. Yeah, his development was pretty much over, and it was a necessary death, as otherwise Diavolo would have been found out. But I can't lie and say that this death did not hurt, because it most definitely did. While yes, he was still a child who couldn't hide his emotions at all, his death proves that the other members of the gang can't do it either. This death makes the survivors realize the cruelty of fate, how it kills off people regardless of if they deserved it or not. Narancia didn't deserve this fate. He had aspirations, unfinished business, pizza to eat, etc. And yet killing him off feels natural as he has proven everything he had to prove. Even if there were a few missteps here and there, Narancia showed that he could grow up and be a decent human being despite all the shit he had to go through. In the end, Narancia became something more than just a joke character, proving his resolve time and time again. As he departs the skies, he provides the necessary motivation for Giorno to start the Requiem, and after putting Diavolo to some really weird death loop, Part 5 ends. That was a really fun video to make. I really enjoyed rewatching Part 5 and reading the manga for the first time, and I've always wanted to make this video because Narancia is just a character I hold so close to my heart. So, yeah, hopefully this video managed to present how growing up is not as straightforward as most people think, and that Narancia isn't just a comic relief character, you know, who's there for the haha, the hee-hees, and the giggles. In a cohesive manner, of course. And, next video might be about Danganronpa. There's this one video I've been putting off for a while now. So, yeah, that might be it. Might be something else. Who knows? Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more life-changing content. And goodbye.